overview of today's presentation, we're going to do introductions, Zoom logistics, general overview of the college application process, and then we'll talk about UCs, Cal States, private universities. And then the last part of it will be kind of how do you start creating your own list of schools? You might be wondering where you want to apply, you might not know. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll end with the survey. So about the First Gen Empowerment Project, again, a lot of you might remember us from when we were still in school, but we are a program at Van Nuys High School that provides college and career readiness resources for all high school students and Van Nuys, but now we're expanding to all high schools in California. So our website and all of our resources are available for everyone. I started the First Gen Empowerment Project last year after graduating from UC Berkeley. So this is funded by UC Berkeley, and when school was still in session, we were offering a lot of weekly workshops, one-on-one counseling sessions, and everything was in person. But now that we're online, we're doing all of those things still, but just online. So you can find us on Instagram. If you ever have any questions about college, you can either message us on our website or through Instagram, also email. All of those work. We're doing these workshops every week up until August, so you can attend any of those. Yeah, so we're just trying to make ourselves available in different platforms. So whenever you have questions, if you ever need help, we're here for you. And also we have a lot of our club members here today. So if you want to join and get more involved and you're still at Van Nuys High School, or you will be next year, that's another great opportunity to join the club and you know, just be more involved in the planning process. Okay, awesome. Amy, do you want to do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah, okay. So hi, my name is Amy. I just recently graduated Van Nuys High School, and I'll be attending CSUs, and in the fall as a biology major, I plan to like head into the pre-med track. Plans may change, so we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Amy's also part of the First Gen Empowerment Leadership Program, or she was this semester, along with a couple of our members here. I see Crystal and Andre. I'm sure a few people are also here. And so a little bit about me. Like I said, I graduated from Berkeley last year. I majored in sociology. And I started this project because I went to Van Nuys High School and I graduated in 2015. When I was there, I didn't have access to a lot of information that I needed. I didn't really understand how financial aid worked. I didn't have a lot of guidance from my counselors or my family. So I wanted to provide something that could help other students as well. So, you know, hopefully people are less confused and are able to take advantage of all of the opportunities that are out there. So that's where this program comes from. Okay, so now we're gonna get started. And again, ask questions as I start talking and we'll answer them eventually. So we're covering a lot of different types of colleges, which is kind of difficult because they all have different requirements and deadlines. But very general overview, the application process, the period goes from August to sort of February. But February is kind of a stretch because a lot of the deadlines will be before then, but there are some colleges that their deadlines are in February. So again, not all schools have the same deadline, so you really do have to be careful and keep track of all of the different deadlines. But the general requirements for all colleges are an application, which you will turn in online, SAT, ACT scores, not for the UCs anymore, but for the other colleges, transcripts, so you can put up, you have to basically, for each application, put what classes you've taken and what grades you got. So you'll need your transcripts from your counselor. You can get them at the college office for free. Personal statements, most of the colleges will ask for personal statements, multiple of them, and then letters of rec. Not every college will ask for it, and we'll talk more about that later. But you might need to start thinking about who you're going to ask for your letters of rec. There are different types of colleges, like I've said. So there are the UCs, which have 9 campuses, the Cal State universities, which have 23 campuses. There are private universities like USC, Stanford, Occidental, and there's hundreds, if not thousands of them around the country and around the world. And then there are community colleges and trade and technical schools. For this presentation, we're not talking about community college and trade schools, just because there's separate workshops for that, because the process is different than the UCs, Cal States, and private. So for this presentation, that's what we're focusing on. Okay, so starting with the UCs, there are 9 campuses, and there's a map with all of them. The closest one to us, obviously, is UCLA, and then UC Riverside and Irvine are pretty close as well. Okay, so very broad overview, because I think people kind of get confused with by what the differences are between the UCs and Cal States. And I think the main difference is the UCs are research oriented. They're known for producing research. So like when you read an article and it says, this research study shows X, Y, and Z, that's what the UCs do. They produce those research studies and they offer a lot of research opportunities. So if you're kind of interested in that, UCs are a good place to go. Professors tend to also be researchers. So in addition to teaching classes, their side job, or teaching is their side job, they're mostly there to do research. And that's, so if you ever ask a professor, if you look them up online, they'll have research specialties. So they have a topic that they're super interested in, they've written books about, they've done research on. Most of the UCs are on the quarter system, which means they run 11 weeks long. And the only exceptions are Berkeley and Merced, which are semester system, just like high school. So you know how Van Nuys runs from like August to December? That's what Berkeley and Merced does. But then the rest of the UCs start from September. So it's a little bit shorter. Specialized programs, some of the UCs have nursing. I know UCLA does. There's business programs. There's fellowships and internships that are offered through the UCs. And then there's like study abroad and UCDC programs. UCDC is basically you spend a semester in Washington, DC, and you work part-time and then you take classes part-time. And study abroad just means you go to another country. Study abroad programs are canceled for now. So things will have to kind of settle down before you can study abroad. But that's, I mean, you will be you're just starting college and you haven't even started. So you should be okay by the time you do start college. Okay, so applying to the UCs, there is one application for all 9 campuses. So it doesn't really matter how many UCs you apply to, you still have to turn in one application. And the application period is from November 1st to 30th. So you do have to get it in by 30th, and you apply online at that link, the apply.universityofcalifornia.edu. And the requirements are the same for all 9 campuses. The minimum GPA that you need is 3.0. A lot of the UCs are super competitive, so 3.0 probably won't cut it. You likely need a higher GPA than that. Your A through G requirements, so all of the classes you've been taking so far in high school. Personal insight questions. They give you 8 prompts and you're supposed to pick 4 of them and write 350-word essays. So they're really short. You really can't go into that much details, but there's 4 of them. So if you take all 4 together, you get one long essay. So you have to be careful not careful, but you have to make sure that you're writing about different topics so you can get as much information out there as possible. And we will have workshops about the personal statements to help you write them. There are no rec letter requirements. And for fall 2020, I believe the SAT, ACT is optional, which means if you have it, that's fine. They will still consider it. But if you don't have it, they are not requiring it. After next year, it's after fall 2020, they are phasing out SAT, ACTs altogether. So there's just no requirement for that at all. I think what this means, again, I'm not an admissions officer, so I'm not saying this like that this is fact, but them not looking at the SATs or not weighing it as heavily means your GPA and your extracurricular statements, your personal statements, all of this will matter a lot more. So you really want to make sure your application is absolutely perfect when you turn it in. So your essays are strong, your extracurricular activities, you describe them well. Yeah, I think that will help your application stand out. There is a lot of financial aid for the UCs. You apply for them through the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act if you're undocumented. And through that, if you apply for FAFSA or the California DREAM Act, you might access grants, loans, scholarships, work study. Most people that I know don't have to pay tuition to go to the UCs because financial aid covers, at the very least, it covers tuition. It might also cover everything else for you. So I was very fortunate to go to Berkeley, and I didn't pay for tuition, but I also got enough scholarships through Berkeley to not have to pay for housing or much of anything. And I also applied for scholarships once I got there. So for the most part, I didn't have to pay anything for college. So it is absolutely possible. You shouldn't stop yourself from applying or attending a UC because you think it's too expensive. All right, California State University, the CSUs, there's 23 campuses, so there's a lot more. The closest one to us is CSUN, or to Van Nuys High School is CSUN, but there's a bunch of them all over. About the CSUs, as opposed to the UCs, CSUs are known for hands-on education. So a good example of this would be a lot of the CSUs offer a teaching credential. So you get your degree in something, but you can also graduate with your teaching license or certificate, so you can go work at a school, right? The UCs don't really do this. So it's more, the CSUs are more focused on kind of certificates and job readiness, which you won't find as directly at the UCs. It's non-research oriented careers. I don't know if that's true necessarily. Like if you want to go do research at a Cal State, you just have to find different ways to do it because it's not a research institution. Like they don't have research centers on campus. Semester system, most of the Cal States are semester systems, so they run 16 weeks long, except for Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, which is quarter system, so it's 11 weeks long. Specialized programs, similar to the UCs, they also have nursing programs, business programs, fellowships and internships that you can do on campus, and also they do study abroad. Yeah, so I would say very similar in the sense of like the opportunities that are offered. I think the biggest difference for me would be kind of the UC focus on research. Applying to the Cal States, it's one application for all 23 campuses, similar to the UCs, and the application period starts from October 1st to November 30th. So it's 1 month before, it opens 1 month before the UCs, but it ends the same day as the UCs. So you have to get all of this turned in by the 30th, which is over Thanksgiving break. And I know a lot of people start everything over Thanksgiving break. I don't recommend it because at that time you won't have access to a college counselor or a teacher to help you with anything that you might need. It's good to start it when school is still in session. You apply online at calstate.edu/apply. The requirements sort of similar to the UCs. Well, okay, so the minimum GPA for the Cal States is 2.0, so it's a bit lower than the UCs. You still have to do your A through G requirements, so your English classes, math, science, all of those. There are no personal statements for the most part. There might be some majors that require you to write an additional statement, but as a whole, I've seen a lot of people's Cal State applications. I haven't seen anyone write a personal statement. There are no rec letters involved, except for the EOP program, which we will talk about in a minute. And you might need the SAT or ACT. And I say might because if your GPA is high enough, you generally don't need to take the SAT or ACT. There's a whole chart on their website that you can find that will let you know based on your GPA whether you need the SAT at all, or if you do need the SAT, what it needs to be. So I recommend looking at that chart because it's a whole thing. Like they have a whole formula. So you know, you don't have to take it if you don't need it. Financial aid is very similar to the UCs. You apply for FAFSA or the California Dream Act. And then through it, you can access grants, loans, scholarships, and work studies. And we'll do multiple workshops on financial aid. So we can talk more about that then. Okay, so here's the EOP program I was talking about. Basically, it's a mentorship and advising program for first generation, low income, and students of color. And the requirements are not too bad. You answer a few short essay questions that's part of the Cal State app. And you need 2 recommendation letters, which you have to submit by January 2021. So the CSU application ends in November, but the recommendation letter deadline is January. So you have a lot of time to secure your rec letters and have your teachers and counselors turn those in. Amy, do you want to talk about the EOP program a bit more?
Yeah, so like for EOP, like when you're applying to Cal State, it's part of the application if you want to apply to it. And the short essay questions aren't that bad. So like if you're interested and want to do it, I say just go for it because it's not that, like it's an opportunity that will benefit you.
Yeah, the UCs also have the exact same EOP program. It's the funding goes to different campuses, but the UCs don't require you to have a recommendation letter. It's like one very short, like a couple of sentences describing why you want to be in EOP. So the Cal States have a more lengthier application process, but still it's not that bad. The essays are really short and you can get that turned in 1 day. Okay, before we start the private universities, Amy, do you want to talk about the Cal State application process? Or even the UCs, because I know you applied to both.
Yeah, for Cal States and UCs, I feel like the application is kind of straightforward. Like it's for UCs, it's more so your personal statements, and for both applications, you have to fill in your basic information like your name, your family, your ethnicity, and then there's a section where you have to input all your grades and like APs and college classes that you may have taken. And for this section, I recommend like emailing your counselor, asking for an unofficial transcript. So when you're filling out the application, you have your transcript right next to you, and it's like easy back and forth filling it out. The basic information, it seems easy, but it's kind of time consuming because it's kind of tedious. So I would recommend like working on your personal statements and having 1 or 2 days where you just fill out that basic information. So that way, once you're done with that, your focus is on your essays and any other requirements that you need to have.
Yeah. The application itself isn't hard, it's just long.
Yeah.
So especially the part where you have to enter all your classes, it takes forever because you have to include like each class you take, what grade you got your fall semester and then your spring semester. So it just takes a while. When you ask for your transcripts from your counselor, take a picture of it on your phone because people lose the transcripts all the time. And then they're like, I don't know where it is, I don't know what to do. So just take a picture of it so you have it with you whenever or wherever you go. It's a really important piece of paper because you don't need to send it to the schools just yet, but you need it for yourself so you can fill out the application. And also the for the SAT section, you'll have to report what score you got, but that's not you officially sending your SAT scores. Later on, after you're done applying over winter break, usually like December, you have to officially send your SAT scores through College Board to whatever college you're going to. And we'll talk more about that. And if you don't do that, they can rescind your application because that's part of the application process for you to send the SAT scores. Okay, so private universities has a completely different application process, and they're very different from the UCs and Cal States. And you can find them in California, out of state, and all over the world, like I've said. So some examples of private colleges. Here in California, we have Stanford, USC, Pepperdine, Loyola Marymount, Pomona, Chapman, and then obviously there are the Ivy League schools that you've heard of, and those are all private universities as well, like the colleges like Harvard, Yale, Brown, and then there's tons more, and they don't all have one application, but they are all processed through one website called the Common App, and we'll talk about the Common App in a second. But before I do that, requirements vary, but for the most part, the application period is October 1st to November, sort of. Oh, I'm sorry. This is for the Cal State. Sorry, I don't know why it says private here. I'm going to move to the next slide. There we go. Do your research. Every college is different. For the most part, the deadlines will be from the fall, so when the UCs and Cal States start, but it goes on after November. So USC's deadline, I think, is like February, so it's super late. But then there might be a college where the deadline is December. So you have to make sure you know what all the deadlines are and submit things on that first deadline, because the Common App processes all applications at one time. So again, I'll talk about that in a second. Check to see what programs and benefits are offered from each colleges. Most private schools will require you to take the SAT with essay or ACT with writing. There are personal statements for all of them, recommendation letters, and to reiterate again, please check each school's requirements because they might be completely different from the other schools. Okay, so here's a Common App. Through the Common App, which is just a website, it's called the Common Application. You go on it, you go on the website, you can apply to most private colleges in the United States. And there's like 800 different colleges you can apply to through the Common App. So like USC, Stanford, Chapman, all of those colleges I mentioned, they all process through the Common App. And financial aid process looks sort of similar. You apply for the FAFSA. If you're undocumented and you live in California, you have to apply for the California DREAM Act. You can't do this if you go to another state though. So this only applies if you are going to stay in California and you're going to a California school. FAFSA applies to all over the country. You can go anywhere and you have to apply for FAFSA because it's a federal program. Many schools will also require this thing called the CSS profile, which determines what scholarships you can get from that university that you're going to. So for example, let's say you apply to USC. USC might, in addition to the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act, they might also require you to fill out this profile so they know how much scholarship. Scholarships, usually you get more than public colleges. That being said, privates are also more expensive than public colleges, so like UCs and Cal States. You can also qualify for loans and work study. Regular deadlines, generally early January 2020, maybe December, maybe February. So this is like the I would say like sort of the in between. Check individual deadlines. Also, private colleges offer early decisions, which means you apply earlier than everybody else, and you generally have to commit to going to that school if you get it. Let's say for USC, if the actual deadline is February, their early decision might be December. I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying, like it'll be earlier than what you would normally apply for. And let us know if you have any questions about early decisions. Fee waivers, most of the colleges offer fee waivers. The UCs will offer you 4 free fee waivers through the actual application, and it's income-based. Same with the Cal States, they offer 4 free ones through their application. And then the privates, they go through the College Board website. So if you go to College Board, they have a whole fee waiver section where if you qualify, you'll get 4 application fee waivers. And this is based on a whole bunch of different things. For example, if you go to a school where you get free and reduced lunch, which Van Nuys High School students do, you get those 4 fee waivers. If you go to a school, or if for any reason you receive the SAT fee waiver, so you don't have to pay for it, you are also going to receive the 4 free fee waivers. So you have to apply for it, but you're not automatically going to get it, and that goes to the College Board website. Okay, so creating your college list. There are a lot of colleges out there. How do you know where you want to go? If there's 23 CSU campuses, you're not going to apply to all 23. Which ones do you apply to, right? So here are some things that you can think about. Major, do they offer what you want to study? If you know what you want to study, do they offer it? Do they offer your backup major? Or like, let's say you want to go in for biology, but you're also interested in another major like nutritional sciences. Does the school offer both, just in case you end up switching to nutritional sciences? Is it a good program, right? You might think about, well, does the school have a good ranking for what I want to study? Location, environment. I know you can't really visit campuses anymore, but a lot of schools do virtual tours. So you can go on their website and kind of click around to see what their campus looks like. And just ask yourself, do you see yourself there? You can also look into like demographics to see like the ethnic and racial breakdown of the students who attend, and see if that's a matter or factor to you at all. You should go wherever you're interested. You should apply wherever you're interested, especially with the UCs no longer not looking at the SATs. I think it's kind of a wild card at this point. You can get into schools that you don't even think you can. Extracurriculars, are there opportunities to get involved? Are there research programs if that's something you're interested in? Do they have a good kind of campus community? So some things you might be interested in getting involved with: Model UN, mock trial, research, sports, also internships, study abroad programs, things like that. Cost, obviously, like how much money will you be offered? You won't know this until later, but do they have good scholarship programs? Do they offer, from your research, from what you can tell now, do they have a good financial aid program? So these are some things you can think about. Amy, do you want to talk more about how you created your list?
Yeah, like when I was looking for colleges and like choosing in between what UCs and Cal States I was interested in, one main thing for me was the majors, because I was in between like biology, kinesiology, and then like maybe doing education, because I was like, I don't know if I want to do pre-med or like go into education. So I looked at schools that maybe had both majors as a backup. So that way, like if I decide to go to that school and I decide to change my mind, at least I have something else that I'm interested that the school offers for me. And then virtual tours are a really good plus too. Like go on the college's website, look at the virtual tour, and like see if you like the environment. If the campus is too big for you or too small, like it's up to you, personal preference. And another thing that you can do is like go on YouTube and look up college dorm tours or day in the life of blank college. Those are also helpful.
I watched so many of them. I remember
Yeah.
watching so many of those when I was in community college. Yeah, that's a really good point about size. The UCs and Cal States are pretty big colleges. I think CSUN has like 30,000 students. So does UCLA, so does Berkeley. Like most of the UCs are pretty big. Private colleges tend to be smaller. So if that's something you're worried about, you don't want to go to a really large university, maybe applying to more private universities where you know the population is smaller. Because 30,000 is a lot. It's easy to get kind of lost in the crowd because there's so many people. And you really do have to find your community. I loved going to Berkeley, even though it had like 30,000 students, because I found my community. I found different student organizations to get involved with, and I found people that made me feel like I belong here. So I never felt like, whoa, I'm like one person in this giant campus. But I know some people do. So I would really consider if that's something like, where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself belonging? And, make choices that way. Also, because it's just a list, you don't have to worry about, well, am I going to go to this school? Apply broadly. And then once you have your decisions, you can then decide where you want to go, right? It's always good to apply to more places than less to have as many options as possible. So I think as much as possible it is for you to afford those applications, use all the fee waivers that you can. You should apply to as many colleges as possible. Okay, so now we're going to talk about timeline, because I know a lot of students have questions about when they should be doing what. So we're doing like a month-by-month timeline of where you should be. And then also, this is all available on our website. So if you go to firstgenempower.com, we have an article called College Application Timeline, and we have literally this, but way more details, along with links to other resources that you can read up on. And it just kind of gets you feeling like, okay, I know exactly what I should be doing this month. Yeah, so Amy, do you want to start talking about the timeline?
Okay, yeah. So June and July, so summer. So I assume that everyone right now is in summer break. So right now is the time where you have the time to like research colleges, like look into colleges that maybe you've always dreamed of, and other schools that are local, like UCs, Cal States, anything near you. So start creating a list. I would recommend doing like a spreadsheet, like putting each college, and if you're interested, put the majors you would apply to and any other requirements that they have. And also when applying to these schools, choose safety schools as well, so schools that most likely you'll get accepted into, but also don't be afraid to apply to your reach schools, because you should be able to apply to anywhere, but always keep in mind like the what if. And along with that, you can also use the tool on College Board to look up. You can put your GPA, or like if you've taken the SAT, your SAT scores, to better get like an overview of what schools might be best for you to apply as well. And then start your essays. Personal statements are a big part of your application. It's how the admissions officers will get to know you as a person. So maybe start brainstorming and looking into the prompts and stuff. And then we will also be holding a workshop on starting your essays as well, so you can come and join us. And then if some schools are asking for SAT or ACT, like private, that may be still requiring it, figure out when to take or retake it. Yeah. And then now going back to looking more in the future, August and September, so the beginning of the school year. So during this time is the time where you should continue to work on your essays, keep fine-tuning them, asking people for advice and feedback on these essays. I would recommend like finding teachers or mentors or someone that you trust, or someone that will be willing to tell you like the hard truth, or like maybe what you should fix with your essays to make them better. And also during this time, I recommend beginning to ask teachers for letters of recommendations, because the earlier you ask, the better it is for them too. Because later on, like towards the end or when the deadlines start approaching is when many students ask teachers, and the teachers themselves too are people and they have their own responsibilities. So it's easier to ask before. And then something that I did when asking teachers for recommendations, I always gave them like a brag sheet or a resume, so that way they could get to know me more outside of the academic setting. Okay. And now October comes around, and October is when FAFSA and the California Dream Act opens. So you can start filling out these applications or looking into like any paperwork or anything you may need to fill these out. And then the Cal State application also opens up. And then same as always, like during these months, continue to work on your personal statements. Okay. And then in November, UC's officially open, so you can start filling out the application. So inputting all your basic information. And then November 30th is the deadline for UCs and Cal State. I would also recommend don't submit your application the last day because sometimes these applications crash. So it's better to be safe than sorry and try to submit your applications a couple days before or the week before. And then November 2 is when some privates, the applications are also due. And then lastly, in December, if you're going to take the SAT or ACT, it's the last time that you can take it before you can send your scores. However, when you take the SAT or ACT in December, you can't see your scores. So you're just sending your scores blindly to these schools. And then also to keep remembering that in December, private university deadlines are soon approaching. So like remember to keep in mind to finishing up the Common App and looking into the deadlines as well. And I know like this may like all of this information may seem overwhelming, but you can do it. Like it's gonna take a lot of hard work, and yes, it's your senior year, but it's like your last final like push to the finish line. And something to like keep yourself organized with everything that's going on is, for me, spreadsheets helped a lot. So I got to keep track of the schools, the requirements that they needed. So if I needed to send in like scores or anything that I needed to finish, I kept track of it there, along with like privates and Common App, because Common App is its own application. And then the school that you're applying to Common App has its own application. And those have different requirements. So keeping track of all those requirements and deadlines are also important. And then once you finish up sending in all your applications, like you finish applying to schools, you're done, but you're not done because there's more. Coming spring semester or like over winter break, make sure to keep checking your emails because schools will be sending out like information for you to set up your portal or any other requirements or any paperwork that you need to submit. So make sure to keep checking your emails. You can also, this is a time to look for scholarships, finishing up applying to FAFSA and the California Dream Act. For FAFSA and the California Dream Act, I personally think the earlier you submit it, the like faster the response you'll get like for your financial aid. So try to finish those up early. And then make sure to send in your official ACT and SAT scores to the schools. And after you graduate high school, so once you're done with senior year, make sure to send your AP scores and your final transcript to the schools.
Yeah. And because we don't know whether we'll be online or in person or what the school situation will look like in the fall, if you're contacting your teachers or counselors for anything, do it in advance. Don't do it like 2 days before and then hope that they will respond because they might not, right? So whatever you need to do, plan ahead for any complications so you can message Ms. Charlton or any of your other counselors and ask them any questions or anything that you might need. Plan ahead because you can't expect anyone to reply back on time anymore, is what I'm saying. And yes, please keep checking your emails. I know students who didn't check their emails over winter break and they didn't realize they were supposed to send their SAT scores. And that is that's a reason for you to get rescinded. Like your admissions can be denied because you didn't send what you were supposed to. So keep an eye on your email. Make sure that you are looking at anything that might come up. FAFSA and the California Dream Act, they also email you about a bunch of stuff. So maybe even creating a separate email just for college applications so you can keep it separate and have everything in one place. That might be helpful. Okay, so next steps for you all will be to start a college application tracker. We have provided a template here. Basically, what you're trying to do in the next few weeks, kind of like an unofficial homework, put together a list of schools you want to apply to, right? Based on what we've just told you, like safety, target, match, right? Based on your GPA, on your SAT scores, are these schools within your range? Are they out of your range, or are they like below your range, as in you will for sure get in? Based on that, put together your list. Keep track of all of your deadlines and requirements, especially if you're applying to private colleges, because they will have different essay prompts. Each school will have their own prompts, and then Common App as a whole will have its own essay prompt too. So a bunch of different essays you have to write. So make sure you know all of them and when to turn them in. And something I mentioned earlier, and I want to clarify, if let's say you're applying to 5 private colleges through the Common App, you have to turn in the Common App at the first college's deadline, at the earliest deadline. You can't turn in the Common App in multiple times. You can only turn it in once. So it has to be turned in when the first deadline is. So if the first deadline for your 5 private colleges is, I'd say December 30th for one of the privates, that's when you have to turn in all 5 of the college applications, because you can't go in and then turn in it again, if that makes sense. Let me know if you need more clarification on that. But basically, plan ahead and aim to turn everything in on time. Yeah, so use this to keep yourself on track, because I think it'll be a good way to make sure you're not missing anything, right? Any recommendation letters that you might need. And to, I know Amy mentioned the brag sheet earlier. It's important that you give your teacher a brag sheet, because I know teachers who will send the exact same rec letter for all students. So you don't want that to happen, because then it's a generic template that's been used for everyone. The more information you give to your teachers and your counselors, the more personalized they can make it, right? So if you give them a list of everything you've done at Van Nuys or in your school, as well as the grade you got in that class, your involvements, those are things that they can now write about on their personal statement, because they have likely forgotten what you have done, even if they know you personally. So remind them. It's like basically a reminder. Hey, here's everything I've done. Please write about it in my personal statement. And it's not weird to tell them to do that too. Like, I have asked for personal statements before, and I've basically told my professors, would you mind emphasizing this, this, and this? Like, if you've asked politely, I don't think it's a big deal to ask them to specifically write about something. Okay. Go ahead.
Also, with the recommendation letters, asking your teachers early and giving them enough time before the deadline also helps with that. So you give them enough time to do it, and then make sure you go back to remind them like about the deadlines, or ask them like, hey, are you done yet? Do you need anything else? Just like be kind and like polite to them, because they're doing you a favor.
Yeah. And you can always send them like a thank you card afterwards, just to, show your appreciation. I think we had a question. Someone, okay, will my chances of entering a UC decrease if I choose to not put my SAT in? Okay, so what the UCs are saying is they will not factor in your SAT towards your admissions. That's what they're saying. That is their official statement. That being said, if there are people who do have SAT scores on file, they are still looking at it. Basically, I'm not going to give a straight answer because I'm not an admissions person and I can't, but you're technically still considered like competing with people who have SAT scores on file. So that's something to think about. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a very clear answer. For something like this, if you want a very straightforward answer, something you can consider doing is emailing an admissions officer at one of the UCs. So you can email the admissions office and ask, if I don't put my SAT score in, will that decrease my chance of admission, and see what they say. I don't want to say anything because, again, I don't work in the admissions office. I don't know how they're going to compare those applications. Yeah, essentially it can't hurt. Yeah, but if once we get to the stage where nobody has an SAT score, that's different, because then it's like, okay, no one has this one additional piece of information. But as of right now, there are a lot of people who have SAT scores on file. Okay, were there any other questions? So so the CSUs are not considering SAT, ACT due to the pandemic. Okay, that's good to know. But they haven't officially canceled them, right? They're not saying that we will forever not look at them. They're just saying for this year, they're not looking at them. Okay, yeah, so that's good. That means if you're just applying for the privates and the CSUs, you don't really have to worry about the SAT, ACT too much. It's only for privates. Any other questions? This is a good time to unmute yourself, and any thoughts, anything you have in mind that we can answer for you. Or you can also just message on the chat box. Okay, so while we're doing that as well, please go to this link, bit.ly/FGEP-Summer1. We have a survey ready there, just so we know how we're doing, and because we're doing 15 more of these workshops, so we want to make sure we're as helpful as possible. So please go to the survey and let us know any thoughts. And let me see if there is other things. So our website, again, I'm going to pitch it, firstgenempower.com, has a ton of different articles and information. That's basically what we're presenting here to you, right? But it's more detailed. So we have an article where it's an entire timeline, and for each month we break down everything that you need to know. So I highly recommend checking that out because we use that timeline that we've already created to create this presentation. So you're getting like a summary version of that timeline. I suggest checking it out as well.